listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Web Trends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI on their digital properties. Web Trends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed-price contract with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the marketing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. Today, I'm joined by Luca Senatore. Luca came to England from Italy at the age of 25, with only a few words of English and less than £100 in his pocket. He is now the CEO of award-winning agency Genie Goals, author of the agency Build, Grow, Repeat, and a proficient industry speaker around marketing, motivation, people and growth. His journey has been a long but very interesting one, and unusually for a CEO, he now uses his experience over the years to help and encourage other agencies on sustained growth. Luca, from very humble beginnings to a top agency, what was your journey and what made you succeed?
Yes, it was a long journey. It was full of ups and downs, as I'm sure any entrepreneur will probably report. In my case, it was slightly different because I grew up in circumstances that were challenging with a slightly dysfunctional family. My father left when I was about 5 years old, which wasn't a bad thing because he wasn't a very nice person. So you have that silver lining. But the downside of that is that back in the day, especially in Italy, it was very atypical for families to be broken up. And it was very atypical for women to having to work to make ends meet, really. And my mom had to figure that out by herself. And it wasn't easy at all. And at the age of 13, I had to stop school, which was the earliest that you were legally allowed to do so. And went to work in a factory bending, welding, and cutting metal for the building trade. And it was challenging, but it also was a very good school. And then when we were able to manage the desk to a level where we could perhaps take a little bit of risks, I decided that I wanted to become a marketeer or something that allowed me to earn more than just the minimum wage. And so I quit my job and I told my mom I found this great job as a marketeer, which was really a salesperson with a glorified title. You needed a little diploma to do so. So I went to school at night as I was working, and I got that little diploma. And then I started working. And my mom was very nervous because it was a commissions only job. And she said, are you really sure we need the money? But the truth is that within 3 months, I was earning a lot more than any of my friends. So things were looking really, really bright. If it wasn't for a car crash that I had, where the car was totally demolished, it was a write-off. And whilst we earned good money, it was just too short for us to build the buffer. And so we were not able to buy another car. The good thing is that my mom had a small income that supported her. And so I thought at that stage, the debts are paid, my mom will be fine. I'm just going to take another risk and leave. So I left Italy. And that was when I was 25 years of age. I wasn't exactly young. Oh, I wasn't old, but I wasn't like a teenager. And I landed in this country with 65 pounds to my name. And I couldn't speak a word of English. And I remember being able to find through a lady who was half Italian, a job as a kitchen porter in a fish restaurant. And at the end of the shift, I could understand what they were saying to me, which was, go home, go home. And in my mind, I thought, John, well, they saw how hard I really worked, so they're cutting me some slack. But what it turned out that they were saying is that go home, never come back. You can't work here because you can't understand us. And so, it started off roughly, but, then you persist, and I learned enough English. And then I built a restaurant through some marketing strategies that I was learning, because I fell in love with marketing. I never stopped learning. And when I started working at that restaurant as a marketing manager, they gave me some shares, which were valued as zero because the restaurant was making a loss. But within a year, we doubled the revenue. My shares were worth a little bit. My English improved. So things were looking well. And then I started opening a couple of businesses because I seemed to be able to grow these things. And within that, I opened a marketing consultancy, which went very well. And quite quickly, really, I mean, within 2 or 3 years, I was known locally as the marketing guy. And a dear friend of mine, was running a publishing business, an affiliate business called Genie Ventures. And one day he called me up and he said, "Oh, Luca, we are thinking of maybe starting an agency. We have developed this piece of tech that is very good at automating bids for Google AdWords. And we thought maybe we package it up as an agency and we take it to market. Can we have a chat so that, we can pick your brains?" So I had a coffee with Kieran Dunn, and I gave him my 2 cents. And then we went our separate ways. And 2 years later, they were pretty much still at the same point, not because of lack of trying or because of inability, just because the publishing business was so busy. And but they still had this piece of tech that was proven very successful in managing bids for their own affiliate publishing business. And together we made a decision to join forces. I sold my 3 businesses and I went in to grow what today is Genie Goals. And that's it. And then the rest of it, the rest of it is history. We went in with a big promise. We were going to revolutionize the digital marketing for retail brands. We worked very hard, a bit of luck, a lot of persistence, and here we are today.
And do you think that it's your work ethic that's helped you succeed to where you are today?
Without a doubt. Talent. If somebody works hard and has talent, great. But talent shows up unpredictably and then takes naps unpredictably. It's a bit like luck. It's easier with luck, but you can't rely on luck. Whereas work ethics are in our control. We just make decisions. When I work very hard, I work extremely hard. I get up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and I work very hard. And people mistake that for something I like doing. Nobody likes waking up at 4:30 in the morning. Nobody likes waking up. You do it because you have your priorities set right. And there's nothing wrong with not doing it. There's nothing wrong with binge watching Netflix if that's what you want to do. But if you have your priorities set and then your behavior doesn't match those priorities, then that is when the problems come in. So for us, I think we're very lucky to all have our priorities very, very set right, and the work ethics that back it up. So absolutely, I think hard work beats talent any day of the week.
You just mentioned that part of your role in life is being a mentor. But in addition to that, you're also a very proficient speaker around motivation, growth, and people, as well as being the CEO of an award winning agency. How do you balance all the demands that this brings, and which one are you most passionate about?
It's a great question. So let me start from the balance. I don't think of it as balancing. I think of it as one needs the other. So I've always been passionate about personal development and the ability to get the best out of ourselves. And I think without that, I would certainly not have done my job as well as I did as a CEO, because what I bring isn't the technical know-how of how to run and build campaigns. Marketing strategy is something that I know, but it moves all the time. I think what I bring is that leadership of being able to get peak performance out of me, and then perhaps lead by example. And we made that part of our brand. We made that part of our success in. In driving the business forward by developing people, and not only technically but also with their minds and their personalities. So more than a balancing act, is certainly a complementing element to it. And in terms of which one I'm most passionate about, I love marketing. It's a fascinating industry because there's a lot of psychology behind marketing strategies. But it's marketing. My wife is an occupational therapist, and her job is to make the life of kids who have been impacted by severe illnesses or accidents a lot better. Now, that is a very important, meaningful job. We essentially help retail brands sell more stuff.
Yes.
So, if I'm totally respectful but also very candid, I can't be passionate about that in the same way that I'm passionate about developing people. So what I'm about is to bring in kids out of university or people that work in other companies and help them see that they are valuable, help them see that they can grow, help them see that they can contribute and become better professionals and even better people through it and make a difference in that way. You know, when you go home at night and you think I supported 40 people and I helped somebody who was emotionally feeling perhaps a little bit fragile today, that is what's in it for me, I think.
Well, that's very interesting, and by bringing new people in, you probably get a different insight from them into your business as well. And if I make reference to something that was in your book, The Agency Build, Grow, Repeat, you say that people don't take risks anymore. And by doing that, they miss out on opportunities. Why do you think people are so risk adverse?
It's a very good question. I think it's interesting. I'm going to paraphrase and probably be incorrect in parts of what I'm going to say now, but there was a program a few years ago that showed the radius around one person's house where their kids were allowed to play, right? And I think it was like 500 yards or something like that. And they compared it to the same analysis, but maybe 10 years before. And the radius was double. So parents were more comfortable in letting their kids play a little bit further from their house than they are today, right? And
Mhm.
you can't help but think, or certainly the program was arguing, and I can't help but agree with that, that the information that we have today is much wider. You know, we know of stuff that happens everywhere and pretty much in real time through social media and through the internet. And I think perhaps because of the fact that our attention falls on bad news more than it does on good news, and also the fact that maybe bad news makes the media more often than good news does, maybe the level of fear is increased. And the same maybe goes with business. I don't know why they don't take risks. All I do know is that they don't, because I see it when I mentor people, I see it with our clients, I see it with our staff. Um, People don't take risks. So the why is pure speculation. I don't have the answer to that, but they certainly don't. And I think if you don't risk anything, you risk everything, right? Because it's you can't. It's very hard to achieve something remarkable if you don't put yourself out there.
You mentioned that there's fears within people. Do you think that manifests itself in an increase in insourcing? That is, clients doing more of the marketing themselves. And how would you advise agencies that may be seeing potential client reduction to adapt their revenue stream?
Yeah, I don't know if fear is what drives insourcing. I mean, I wrote the book, The Agency, because back when we started the agency, there were a large number of agencies who, in our opinion, did their job very poorly. And there are a number of agencies that do their job incredibly well. But we really wanted to form almost an alliance with every agency to represent our industry well, and to do a good job for our clients, to take pride in what we do. And I think, if I'm totally honest, insourcing comes more from that than it comes from not taking risks. I think it comes because a lot of brands have been burned by agencies. If you think about it, it's very easy to set up an agency. You and I can tomorrow set up a graphic design agency, and none of us might be a graphic designer, right? So
Hmm.
it's an unregulated industry, and so I think part of that is probably driving this need of insourcing, the low trust in agency. And the second part, maybe, and again, I'm speculating here, but it may be the fact that people want control. It's easier to control people that you have in house than it is to control an agency because they are independent, of course. And maybe that's what's causing maybe this effect. I don't know. What I do know is that we need to adapt as agencies because otherwise we're going to be left behind and dry. So what we did to adapt is a couple of things. The first one is to try and mitigate the risk that our clients decide to insource. And uh, and the only way that we know how to do that is to deliver a fantastic service and to try and become their team. And in practical terms, that means spending more time with a client, spending more time talking about business problems and not just marketing problems, spending more time with our staff in their offices. We've allowed secondments to take place with our clients, and that, in our opinion, mitigates the risk that clients decide to go in house just because they don't see agencies being the key to their success. So we try to make ourselves the key to their success when it comes to marketing. The second thing that we're trying to do is to adapt and to provide services that brands with in-house teams can use, whether it's consultancy, whether it's training, whether it's one-off audits, whether it's whatever it may be. Because if you look at it completely unbiased, there are downsides of having an in-house team. The fact that you become it's harder to get training because the resources may not be as available, whereas with an agency, part of our onboarding with new staff is to make sure that they always trained. We have access to perhaps the training that the providers of the likes of Google and Facebook make available to us, because we're an agency, we manage bigger spend than most brands do on their own. And so we maybe have access to that. We have access to different set of metrics and stats because we work across a number of clients. And when you work on just one account, it could be easy to miss some of these things. So there are things that are better with the help of an agency, even if you insource. So we try to bring in those things. We try to bridge that gap and provide value. What's challenging there is obviously the business model, because if you are set up to be an agency and to profit from that model, then all of a sudden being a consultancy requires a different business model. So that was the biggest challenge for us.
And part of that kind of overall value offering that you there is, it must be that agencies now are much more challenged to deliver results. So by being able to deliver results, how do you measure results within an agency?
So the results that we drive for our clients, you mean?
Yeah. So if, for instance, if you're trying to ascertain what value you deliver to the clients, and you just said, actually, you need to deliver more value. Value is obviously different to different clients, but essentially I would say there's a much more focus on return on investment. And therefore,
Yes.
the things that drive return on investment, are those the things that clients value more than the traditional client-agency relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really comes down to expectations. And this conversation is a conversation that needs to be had at the beginning of the relationship. What does good look like? What's the expectation here? What are we tasked to achieving on a hard metrics, right? And then everything else, I think, works as a tool to ensure that the client won't make decisions just based on performance. For instance, if you have a strong relationship with somebody and you trust them because they've demonstrated to be sincere and honest and open and transparent, and you trust them because they demonstrated to be competent, and then performance doesn't look good, the first thing that you go and do is to work with the agency and find out why, right? Find out what happened and how you can fix it. The same scenario, but with a different relationship, where perhaps the agency hasn't been able to win that trust, hasn't been able to demonstrate transparency, hasn't been able to demonstrate the authority and the competency, and then performance go down. The first thing that you do as a client is to get an agency to do an audit and perhaps question the work of the agency that you have. The scenario is the same. They've done an experiment with GPs, general practitioners, doctors, and they have taken a large group of doctors and looked at the historic complaints that each of these doctors have or had. And then half of these doctors were trained in rapport building skills. Right? And then they tested it again several months later. The group of doctors that were trained in rapport building skills reported a massive decrease. I think it was 45% decrease in complaints. Right? And nothing had changed. They were making the same mistakes as before. The ratio was the same. All that changed is that they built better rapport with patients, and patients were complaining less, right? And I think that's very important to understand, because it goes to show that if you trust me and if I trust you, when there is a mistake, we look at the mistake with a goal-oriented attitude. How can we fix this? But when you don't trust me or I don't trust you and something happens, then we question each other. That's very natural. So what we do there is twofold. One is to set the expectation very correctly at the beginning. What do you think that working with us will give you? And then the client typically goes on and say A, B, and C, and we clarify those points very, very firmly. Okay, yes, well, we can probably deliver A, B, and C, provided commercial rate is the same, provided the industry is the same, provided that coronavirus doesn't become a thing, and so on and so forth. But we cannot be judged only on the output, because as we all know, for example, well, not for example, in our industry specifically, in marketing, the output is not always a reflection of the input. There may be other factors that affect that, right? And so, if we are only judged by our output, there may be pieces of the puzzle that we miss. And the same goes the other way around. We have some clients where performance looks fantastic, incredible, but maybe there is a main competitor that is going into administration or anything like that. So we cannot be judged just on the output. It's the input, and it's the relationship that one builds with the client that I think drives the result. Ultimately, we need to be able to demonstrate an ROI or an ROT, a return on time. We need to. My motto is very simple, John. Is the value of what we do for a client needs to be for a client much larger than the value of the money that they give up. And if we can do that in whichever way, whether it's through ROI, ROT, or ROH, return on happiness, whatever, then we're happy.
I've never heard return on happiness before. That's a good
Yeah, I
good
think I
way
just made
forward.
it up.
It's good anyway. It's quite good because obviously happiness does have that kind of value inside of a business. If you're happy with the people you're dealing with, if you're happy with the agency that you're working with, then obviously small mistakes get overlooked. If you're unhappy with it, then every little mistake is dug into and trying to find out reasons why it's not working and things like that. So I think a return on happiness is quite a nice phrase. But just taking a little step backwards into the way that marketing over the last 5 or 10 years has become much more metrics driven with regard to pay for performance, PPC. You're talking about SEO and the effect on SEO and real page rankings. You talk about conversion rate optimization and conversion rates inside of that. Is that a particular to the individual that you're dealing with inside the client? By that, I mean, if you look at a marketing manager is always looking to please the marketing director with tangible results. Not so much effort, but I've done this and this is what's happened. And therefore, they kind of earn what I would describe as brownie points to be able to say, hey, this is good. But as you get further up the tree, it used to be that relationship between a client and the agency was much more about a relationship. But now I feel that marketing firmly sits at the board level. And therefore, those metrics which marketing managers use are now being elevated into the boardroom. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And what happened, I think, in the last few years is exactly that. And as an agency, what we had to do is to create what I call tensility. Tensility meaning the links or the reasons to stay with an agency going beyond just the results and just the relationship with one person. Tensility in this context for us means building relationships and providing value at different level to different stakeholders. And to do that, we needed to bring in different people, because the account manager could bring value and build a relationship with their marketing manager. But we couldn't expect the same person to build a relationship with a marketing director or with a CEO. So we had to bring in different levels of talent to deal with that. For example, account manager typically deals with a marketing manager, and then we have a head of client services that typically deals with the head of or the director, and then I step in with the CEO when necessary. And we all have relationships with different stakeholders to understand exactly their pain points, because the pain points that a marketing director has are very different to the pain points, as you said, of the marketing manager. The marketing manager's pain point is I need to please my director. The marketing director's pain points may be totally different. And I think to understand that we have to have different levels of relationships. Also because we cannot expect a marketing manager, an account manager, maybe with 3, 4, 5 years experience to deal with somebody that maybe has got 20 years experience. It's unfair.
Alongside of that, you talk about in one of the presentations I viewed online about untangling marketing. And that seems that this is quite a good point to discuss what you mean by untangling marketing. Is that to do with untangling marketing as a concept or untangling relationships within marketing?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. It's probably one of my favorite points. So you probably have to stop me here because I can talk forever about this.
Well, if you can do it in a shortish space of time, that would be great.
I'll try to be concise, but no, actually, I can be very concise. I think the example that I can bring is strategy. If you ask 10 people to define strategy, what do you think they'll tell you? Just maybe 2 people. What do you think 2 people will tell you strategy is? 2 different answers.
I would suggest to grow and to sustain profitability.
Yeah, and yet that is one of the simplest one I've heard. When you ask the same question to different people, they will come up with some sort of very complex answers. Yeah, and I like yours. The way I trimmed it down even more, the strategy is the way in which you want to go. You go from A to B, right? A client or a project or a company is at A, they want to go to B, and the strategy is how you do that. It's quite simple, right? And I think when we started talking about strategy in simple terms, it opened up a very good conversation about people's responsibility, right? Because people sometimes hide behind the complexities of marketing, right? And that prevents them from taking action. Marketing can be very complex. Why? Because there are many ways of doing the same thing, right? There are many ways to drive traffic. If you think about this, let's talk about traffic. You run a retail brand, an e-commerce brand, and you need to drive traffic to make sales. I mean, that's a given, right? You can drive traffic through paid search, right? PPC,
Yep.
Facebook ads, paid Instagram, paid Pinterest, right? You can drive it through email marketing. You can drive through SEO. You can drive through. There's a number of ways, right? Depending on how big the team is, you may be able to do more or less. But what you find, probably due to the fear of missing out and the shiny object syndrome, a lot of people seem to be doing everything at the same time, right? And what that does is that it creates this inability to do anything well. If you imagine having a circle in front of you, that's your circle of focus, energy, money, and time, and you put one strategy in it. So we use PPC to drive traffic, right? And you try that, then you might have certain results. If you then now input, I don't know, YouTube, because people tell you that you need to do YouTube ads, then you have 2 channels in there. Then maybe you need to do Facebook and Instagram, so you got another 2, which makes the circle now populated by 4 potential tools and channels, and you can only dedicate maybe 25% each. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody achieving anything remarkable with 25% attention, time, or money, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes very complicated, right? Whereas for me, what was simplified, what was the key to success was to simplify the strategy, to simplify market, to untangle it. So what do we forget about all the buzzwords, forget about all the channels, forget about everything else. Just tell us what you want to do. Well, we need to drive traffic to this page. With this budget. So is it the traffic that we want to drive? No, it's not traffic. It's the sales. Okay, so we want to drive sales, right? Okay, fantastic. What is the ROI? What is the margin that you have on those products? What is the profit that you want to drive? And when we have these very simple, raw goals that the client wants to achieve, then we can be really creative and say, well, actually, hold on, in our experience, based on the things that we've seen before, the best way to drive traffic and to drive sales at those ROI targets is A, B, and C. So it's really simplifying what the preconceived ideas of strategy and effective marketing may be for clients, because they come in with their preconceived ideas. We want to drive traffic through PPC at this CPA to this page. And yeah, we need to look at this. And they look at things like bounce rate, and they look at things that may or may not be relevant to the goal they want to achieve. So we just flip it all the way back, understand exactly the goal that they want to achieve, and maybe there is a different way they can achieve their goal. And often that leads us to make referrals. For example, most of our clients, well, all of our clients, in fact, need sales, right? Even those that say we want to, raise brand awareness, eventually needs to go down to sales.
Absolutely.
And many times we look at this and we strip down the goal to what it needs to be. So we forget about CTR. They say, oh, we need to have a CTR of X, Y, and Z. Why do you need to have a CTR? What you want to have is sales. Who cares about the CTR? You are now assuming that the CTR will drive the sales, but it's not necessarily true. It may be true, but it's not necessarily true. When we stripped it back down and we then looked at the performance and analytics, we realized that maybe all I treat all with inverted commas, they need to increase their conversion rate. And so we refer them on to a conversion rate optimization agency, because we can drive all the traffic in the world and have a fantastic CTR, but maybe the site is just not geared to convert, right? And so when we do that, we untangle the preconceived ideas, we untangle all the buzzwords, and we untangle marketing, and then we come with a strategy that is very raw, is the simplest, quickest, and most direct way to go from A to B.
So I tend to agree with you overall that what you've just mentioned about untangling marketing is a very strategic place to be. Untangling marketing to be able to uncover the goals in which you're trying to achieve. But I think that the channels, which click rates, all those sorts of things are tactics, which are measurable tactics, which are used at a potentially lower level inside the organization to be able to see whether those strategic goals can be met. And I think that, yes, I agree with untangling marketing from a strategic point of view. What are you trying to do? Not how do we do it, but what are you trying to do and what's your end goal? And then the tactical element will be untangling it maybe at the marketing manager level or the marketing assistant level or the PPC level, but that's much more tactical. And I think that the world is good for both of those things, untangling marketing from a perspective of strategy, but also being able to not go down too much into the weeds to find out whether your click-through rate is right or not. It's your conversion rate, which is obviously the most important thing. As you kind of said, we're all trying to sell something. Just moving on a little bit, because I know we're running short of time, and this has been a great conversation so far. Over the past few months, it's been a completely different world that we've been living in. And post-COVID-19, the world's likely to be a different place. What's your perception of how agencies will work? Will they work from home? Will they still congregate in an office as they used to? Because there's often a feeling that agencies bringing together of minds has always been sitting in a meeting room brainstorming. So what are your thoughts of the future of agencies?
Yes, great question, John. And I apologize in advance, but I feel like an unfinished page if I don't go back and just quickly frame the end of the previous question.
Okay.
I totally agree with you on the tactics, by the way. My comment wasn't exclusive of, strategy replaces the tactics, not at all. I think it's not about using one instead of the others. It's about sequence. It's about when we should look at the strategy and when we should look at the tactics. I feel we should look at the strategy first and then use the tactics to get there and to measure the success of the strategy. Work out a strategy, which is the simplest way to go from A to B, and then we put tactics to deliver, to execute that strategy and to measure it 100%. The problem is when you lead with a tactic, then you are assuming that tactic will then fulfill the strategy, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Now, in terms of the second question, I think it's a great point. I don't know that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. But my feeling, based on my experience building 8 businesses and seeing the agency, is that there will be two types of organizations. If you look at the world historically, and I don't want to open this can right now, but there are things that we know, you and I believe to be obsolete, like discrimination of any sort and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So things that are, in our opinion, obviously wrong, but they still happen, right? And they're
Yep.
very primitive and silly. And the same goes for this. The lockdown has taught us an incredible amount of lessons, and it's made us better. It's made us better persons. It's made us better businesses. Yet there will be a lot of people that will go back to just the way it was before. And I already encountered a couple of organizations where the person told me that their CEO wants everybody back in the office as soon as possible. And this is a large organization, and they measure productivity, and apparently they work on percentile points, and they are now 95% of what they used to be, right? Working completely remotely. Yet the CEO wants everybody back in the office as soon as possible without particular explanation. And I think it's just cultural. Some people would just want to see their employees there. Some people would just want the office a couple of steps higher from everybody else. And I don't think you can change that. For organizations that adapt and become smart, I think it's an exciting time. For us, I don't know if we can do it because we've never done it before. I really hope that we can pull this off. But for us, we are looking at the transformation between being an agency with an office and some people working from home sometimes, to an agency with everybody working from home and somebody coming to the office sometimes. So we would like to have some sort of office, whether that's a WeWork or whatever. We have a large office at the moment, and obviously this is down to the board. But I'd be very surprised if we, if we decide to invest in bigger offices in the future. We would like to have a distributed reality where we can do work wherever we want, whenever we want, and able to deliver productivity and results without needing to be in the same office. Now, there is a fantastic place for meeting people face to face and having socials and having meetings face to face, but I don't think you will have problems arranging those. With a little bit of logistics and a little bit of team effort. So I'm excited about the future. I think the agencies and the organizations that can keep these learnings, cherish them, and really package them up will be much better businesses going forward.
I tend to agree. I think the world has changed for the better, and certainly the approach that people have now is much more caring and concerned, rather than just driving for profitability all the time. There seems to be a softening of business relationships, which is about having respect for the other people that you deal with. And if that respect stays, then I think COVID has, in a certain way, been beneficial. Luca, there's so much more that I'd love to be able to chat with you, and perhaps we can get together at some other time. But thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be able to pick up the discussion and perhaps look back maybe in 6 months' time and say, this is what COVID did, and see how things progress over that time.
I'd love to do that, John. Thank you so much for the opportunity. For me, if anybody ever consumes any content that I produce, they will know that people are the number one asset, in my opinion. And having met people like you, and hopefully people that listen to this show, I think opens up a lot of opportunities. Certainly building human relationships, which I think is 90% of the pleasure of doing business.
Thanks again, Luca, and we'll no doubt speak soon.
Thank you so much.